My name is Ben Twist, and I'm the Director of Creative Carbon Scotland, as it says up there. Creative Carbon Scotland is a slightly weird organisation. We've been going nearly 9 years now, extraordinarily. And my background is I used to be a theatre director, and what Creative Carbon Scotland does is it makes links between the cultural world and climate change. Because our view is that climate change is as much a cultural issue as it's a technical carbon reduction, blah, blah, blah issue. And just to spend a little bit on that, because we don't have much time today, so I'm going to rush through a bit. But I think for a while there was this perception put about by governments of all stripes that remarkably we could do everything zero carbon, but life wasn't going to change. And I think in the last year, and I've been saying this isn't the case for a long time, and in the last year that's become really apparent, that our lives are going to change. We're going to be eating less meat and dairy, we're going to be traveling differently, we're going to be putting on more jumpers, we're going to be thinking differently about the ways in which we live. And that way in which we live, the overall way in which we live, or the ways in which we live, is culture. Culture, in the broadest sense, is how we live in the world, the way we educate our children, the food that we eat, the religions that we follow or don't follow, the ways we think about everything, as well as the books we read, the films we watch, and what have you. So culture, in a very broad sense, is those ways in which we live in the world. And culture, as in the arts, or the screen arts, that sort of broad sense of what you might call the arts, is a reflection of that wider culture. It expresses it on a daily basis, and we see that all the time. And it also offers a way to ask questions about that broader culture, that wider culture. And there's an old saying that art holds a mirror up to society, but there's another saying by the great German playwright Bertolt Brecht: art is not a mirror to hold up to society, it's a hammer with which to shape it or to break it. And I think there's a lot of truth in that art provides a way in which we can think through the ways in which we're going to live in the future, because they are very challenging questions about how the future will be and how we will need to be. So art in its broadest, in that sense, I think helps us think about, helps society think through some of these very difficult questions and understand and work through some of the processes. So Creative Carbon Scotland, that's what we do. We help that happen. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to go to our website, which has a wealth of resources on. And just to say a little bit more about Creative Carbon Scotland, we work in effect in two areas. We work with the cultural sector, so theatres, galleries, orchestras, you name it, helping them reduce their carbon emissions and increasingly helping them think about adapting to the impacts of climate change. But the other side of the work we do, and it's, if you go to strategy at the top right there, you'll if you hover over that, you'll come upon the words culture shift, and that's our program where we seek to encourage climate change organizations, local authorities, projects like your own, to think about using artistic practitioners, cultural practitioners, to achieve their climate change aims. And I'll take you through a couple of examples of that. So while we think that art generally helps society to think, we think also artists can bring to climate change projects a whole series of different skills and different knowledge and different techniques that are not normally invited to the table by climate change things and people. And that's a great shame, because there's some very interesting and lively and imaginative people working in the arts who can contribute to this. I want to be really clear that I'm not saying that artists have all the answers to all those knotty problems. They don't. But just like an economist or a technologist or somebody who's a carbon expert, they can help. And actually, when we work together to put all those different brains together, that's when I think we get some really useful work out of it. Does that make sense? CreativeCarbonScotland.com, do go there. There are also an awful lot of resources on there that are focused, for the most part, on cultural organizations, but actually they're very relevant to all sorts of organizations that attract audiences. So there's a chap here from the YMCA, or I think it is, and you know, people are coming to the YMCA for all sorts of reasons, for sporting, for events and so on, and actually cultural organizations share a lot of the same characteristics as probably some of the other organizations in the room. So what I'm going to do now is talk to you about a couple of projects that we've run, we're doing at the moment, just as examples. And this is a fantastic project, Velo Communities, which is run by Bike for Good in Glasgow. It's a cycling project. And Creative Carbon Scotland was asked by the Scottish Government to document the Velo Communities project because it was the 1000th CCF project. And this started 18 months ago now. And we said, well, we could document it, but that would be fine. You'd just get somebody making a film, but actually an artist joining this project and being embedded in it can do much more than that. They can change the way the project is thinking, and indeed the participants are thinking. And it's a lovely project that is continuing, and there's a very nice film, which is probably going to be shown this afternoon in a 3:40, I think. And also it's available both on the Keep Scotland Beautiful website and on the Creative Carbon Scotland website. If you search for Marek or Yanko on R1, you'll find it, or Velo Communities. What we did is we employed a theatre maker, writer, director, and also and he brought in a filmmaker to make this film, mostly with young people who are participants in the project. And I have to say, it is a charming film. It's really, really nice. There's a taster film, which is about 4 minutes long, but there's a more recent one, which is around 20 minutes long. And what I think they have done by really joining the project and being embedded in it, they've widened the ambition of the project, I think, to say this is not just about getting people on their bikes and reducing carbon. It's actually encouraging both Bike for Good, the organisation, and the participants to think about what a car-free Glasgow might look like, what the future might look like, how that would be, and what some of the steps towards it are. I think it really has had quite an effect on Bike for Good, because if I'm honest, they were sort of told you're going to have some people coming in to work with you to do this, and at the beginning they were saying, well, fine, well, it's nothing to do with us, we'll just let them do it. But actually they become more and more involved in the project, and Lewis, the theatre maker, and Geraldine have been able to bring their knowledge to it and their skills to it. So there was a lovely showing of the film, the premiere, during Climate Week at Bike for Good in Glasgow, which is in Govan Hill, their Govan Hill Centre, which is it's an area that's normally known, I think, for problems. It's an area that's considered to be, it's got multiple deprivation, it's got all sorts of diverse communities that may or may not get on, there's parking problems, there's this and that and the other. But actually what that really demonstrated was an enormous goodwill and a strengthening of the community coming together at that event. And one of the things I really liked about it was that Lewis had said, well, if we're doing a premiere of a film, we need a red carpet. And we need a band playing, and we need a throne for people to make their carbon pledges on. And Lewis, using his theatre connections and skills, managed to get an enormous red carpet that went right out to the main road. There was a great band called Brass Eye. Yep, thank you. And there was a throne, which again was sourced from somewhere, which became quite a feature of people being videoed while they made their carbon pledges. And it was a great afternoon with food and pedal-powered cinema that stopped when some of the kids stopped cycling hard enough and all sorts. There was a great atmosphere to it, and I think it really did that other thing. It really demonstrated that other thing that the Climate Challenge Fund is about, which is strengthening communities to make them more resilient. And it really demonstrated that strength there. Do watch the film. It's a joy. This is another project that we worked on with SEPA and Aberdeen City Council. The Denburn is a stream that runs through this bit of the northwest of Aberdeen, I think, and then becomes quite a big river when it actually hits the town centre, city centre. And one of the problems is that if it floods in the city centre, it causes quite a lot of problems. But in the bit near, I think it's called Summer Hill, where we did this project with a primary school. It's actually quite a small stream that runs through the bit of parkland near the school. And the kids at the school and actually the local community don't really think of it very much, but it is used, that area in that park is used to flood, to allow the river to flood in times of crisis, so that the centre of town doesn't get flooded as much. So it's sort of, it's deliberately flooded there. But that's never really been explained locally, why that happens. So the kids can be walking to school and sometimes they have to walk around the park rather than go direct. Or it goes over the place where they play football and what have you. So this was a much more focused project, I think, than the Bike for Good one. It was one where there was a real reason, a real need, not just to explore what could be done with the artists, but actually for the artists to come in and say, we need to engage these young people, it's a primary school, we need them to understand what's going on with this river and why it behaves like it does. And one of the things I'll talk about in a minute is, I think what was necessary here was to make something that was invisible visible, which I think is something that artists are experienced at doing, actually, is drawing out things that may not be apparent on the surface and bringing them to the surface. So what happened is that we had a musician. Oh, what's happened here? You see, I'm looking at you rather than looking at the screen. That's what they always say you should do. Help. Oh, there we go. We had a musician come in and he worked on writing songs and various things with the young people. And I'm going to press the button very quickly because otherwise it might do that again. I'm relying on you now. It's looking good. Oh, volume. I'm going to stop this for a moment. You see, tech. We should be better at this. I should be better at it. I surprised them by bringing in a video. It's my fault. No, well, luckily, it's got subtitles. Is this going to work? No. I think, whoops. It's a minute and a bit long, and it's probably worth looking at just with the subtitles. So my apologies that there's no sound. But I think it'll give you an idea. It's not long if it doesn't, so take a little micro sleep. Oh, thank you. Don't worry about it. I think all the information is covered. Ah. Right, I think it's probably my fault, really. Bit further down, water flows slow. The Denburn is flooding, don't panic. Natural dams, sticks and of stones. The Denburn is flooding, don't panic. Here it's more natural, listen as it goes. The Denburn is flooding, don't panic. Okay, sing with us. Oh, the burning, oh, the burning, oh, the Denburn is flooding, don't panic. Whoop, stop. So, did you manage to pick that up? Was that all right? My apologies. So what we had there was we had the specific skills of a very fine musician and actually a very good person for public engagement. He was very, very good at working with young people and working with other groups. And I think that is one set of skills that artists can bring, but it's only one, as I'll talk about in a minute. And he was also able to bring that technical skill of doing things like creating a soundscape and really getting into the understanding of how that river works and so on with the young people, and then creating this song. And the interesting thing about the song is that it sort of went viral, and the group was asked to sing at a couple of conferences in Aberdeen, and one on flood management, I think, and one on education. So what would have been quite a small project, I think, just looking in a way at how the river works and so on, turned into something much larger. And again, in some respects, I think, really strengthening the confidence and experience of those young people who were then on stages in front of rows of adults in a place where they normally wouldn't be. I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to move on. Whoops. Oh. Oh, there we go. This is typical old man. I think I've skipped one. This is a project that wasn't anything to do with us. It's called Climavore by Atlas Arts in Skye. And what they're talking about is future diets. And I don't know if you can see that they're actually sitting more or less in the sea. Later on, when the tide comes in, those cages would be covered in water, and I think they're oyster or mussel beds or something. They're deliberately fishing things, and what they were looking at is what future different diets will look like when the climate has changed, and we are also thinking about different ways of feeding ourselves. And what I think they wanted to do was, in quite it's a long project, Climavore. There's a number of elements, and if you go to Atlas Arts website, you'll find out more about it. But I think what they wanted to do is really highlight, in a quite abrupt way, I suppose, the way that things could be done differently and will be done differently, and sitting there in the sea with the water rising around your feet while you're eating shellfish and seaweed and what have you, was a useful way of doing that. It really brought it home very, very clearly. What's going on here? My apologies here on the tech. This project is another one that's nothing to do with us, but it's somebody showing their waste that they collected for a whole year, the waste that they collected for a whole year, I think on a beach. And again, it's just another way, I think, of maybe making that invisible visible, and showing people in a rather clear and shocking way elements around climate change and recycling and what have you. Again, I would say this is partly about the making the invisible visible again. That waste is something that we never see in that quantity at the same time. Are there any questions about all that? I've rushed through those things with a bit of technical problems. Any questions thus far? So what I thought I'd do now is run through a few of the ways in which I think that art works, and there are other ways as well. I've mentioned it makes the invisible visible and the implicit explicit. One of the things I think it can do is take quite abstract ideas which we're having to deal with and think about in terms of climate change and the change that we're approaching, and make them rather concrete. So I suppose that's what happened with the wall of plastic there, and also in terms of Climavore, that actually those things that we think, we've got to change our diet, but what does that mean? How will that be? What does sea level rise mean? Playing out thought experiments. I'm a theatre director by trade, and one of the things you do in the theatre is you say, what if this was the case? And then you work through the implications of that thing. So if you think about a Shakespeare play, King Lear, for example, was written at a time when Scotland and England, the James the First and Sixth, was trying to unite the crowns of and the parliaments of Scotland and England. And what in King Lear he writes about, Shakespeare writes about a country where the king has divided the nation up into three separate parts, and they all end up in battles against each other and fighting. And Shakespeare is saying, what happens if we have this divided nation, and what would happen if actually would it be better if we brought it together? So you can, in a way, in theatre particularly, but in other art forms, you can play things through in quite a safe way. Nobody actually dies in the production of King Lear, although the characters may do. I think one of the things that good artists can do is think non-linearly and innovatively. And I think that's something that is very hard to do. Artists are required in their training and in their practice to be original. Whereas other fields of engineering or whatever, probably when you go to university, when you do that training, you're taught more or less to follow the way that things normally are done. Whereas artists are required to break the rules and to say, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do it this way. And actually that originality is what they're marked on and given credit for. So artists are quite good, I think, to bring into groups and say, actually, we could do it a different way, and here it is. I think, again, good artists, and they're not all good at this, are quite useful for thinking about complexity and the contradictory ideas that are quite relevant to climate change. For a long time we were told life's going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be zero carbon. Those are actually two quite difficult concepts to put together. And I think this happens a lot. What we want and what the case is going to be. How do we hold this together? Often I think it's tempting to sort of rub away the hard edges and the sharp corners and try to make things fit in an easy way. But actually, one of the things that I think artists can do is say, we can do that, but actually we need to think one step further and think beyond the obvious. And holding those contradictory ideas together is something that I think good artists can do. Bringing communities together, as I spoke about with Bike for Good. And finally, and this is what everybody starts thinking about, is communicating emotional truths. Normally when we say bring an artist into the group, everybody says, oh yes, they'll be better at communicating those things than the scientists are, than the engineers are, and so on. And we say, well, yes, they do that, but it's only part of what they do. And if I'm brutal, the last person I would ask to communicate a specific truth that I wanted to communicate would be an artist, because the chances are the artist will say, that's all very well, but I'd rather do that, because that's why you bring artists in. They're there to think differently from you and me. So I think that's, whilst they do communicate well, or they can communicate well, I wouldn't rely on them to do that. If you want to do communications, get a communications expert in. Any questions on any of those? How do you get artists to involved? How do you bring them in? You could ask us, actually, for a start. You could say, do you know anybody who might be interested? And we can help, actually, put the call out or whatever. I think ask around. If there's a local organisation, you're in Cumbernauld, work with Cumbernauld Theatre to see if they've got... if they're reluctant, give us a call and I'll get on the phone to Ed Robson and tell him to get with the project. There are people who are interested. Not all are, and actually you don't want the ones who aren't, because there'll be a problem. And we have a good list. We've got a mailing list of a few hundred artists who are interested in this sort of work. It is increasingly of interest to artists, but I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend all of them. I think it's very important to find the right person for your project, which I'll come on to in a minute. I mean the lot. Any filmmakers, theatre makers, composers, visual artists, writers. I use it in a very broad term. Craftspeople, Any other questions? Yep. Yep, absolutely. I think there is. And what may be necessary is to introduce them to the concept. And it may be so you could say, I will come back to this in a way, but I think starting off with people that you know already, and maybe finding a way to incorporate them, or if there are people who are local but you may not know but you know of, then encouraging them maybe to talk to us or just to bring them in to see what ideas they've got. Because actually, I imagine that most of what you're doing is wanting to talk to more people in your local communities about what you're doing. So they may be, if nothing else, they may be a route to a different group of people who aren't currently engaged. So we are a resource here to encourage this, and we will answer the phone and speak to people or whatever. But I think, first of all, use your own contacts and think through the idea and think what you want, and maybe then see if there are people who can help. Yep. I think so. There's a question, quite a technical question there, really, about how you would contract people, really, and what sort of money you've got and how much it costs and so on. We would encourage people to think that artists are like other people that you're paying for the project, so that they should be paid the proper rate. And artists, we follow the Scottish Artists Union approach, which is roughly an artist should be paid around £300 a day. My experience is that they will do a lot more work for that than other consultants who will do a day's work, but artists will tend to do two. So it sounds a lot, but actually when you compare it with the engineers, the architects, the other people that you might be employing, it's probably not a lot. So I would always encourage artists to be paid, and then I think you'll get people who can devote the time to it. That may not always be possible, and I'm going to leave that to you to some extent. I would argue, in terms of the open call or whether you make it a more specific thing, I think the really key thing is to work out what you're trying to do, what the problem is you're trying to solve, or what the issue is that needs to be looked at, and then thinking very carefully about who you might need to achieve that. And it might be something you can say, well, it's public engagement, we need to get more different people in, and so we can put out a call locally or maybe widely to say that's the sort of thing. Or it may be something very much more specific than that, where there may be relatively few artists. So I think the key to it, actually, is being really clear about what you want out of the project. And I think often in the past, we and others have been not quite clear enough about that when we've begun things. And I think that's a common problem. And I think it's probably true also of working with architects and others, that you may say, I want this fancy thing, and they come in, and if they're not quite clear about what they want, what you want, then you end up, you're here and they're there, you've diverged slightly in the process. So that process of really understanding your needs and then communicating that through an advert, and we can put an advert out, or doing it more locally, is probably the important thing. And also that will help you know, I think, whether you're going to need to pay, what rates you're going to need to pay, what experience you might need. We've got a project at the moment, for example, where the artist really needs to be able to sit in quite a powerful committee and to hold her own with a lot of men in suits. And actually that needs a certain amount of gravitas and experience so that they will take her seriously. Whereas it may be that a younger or less experienced artist would be in a better position to work with a small group in a community or something like that, where there may not be quite such demands when they're not thinking about millions of pounds. So it's very important, I think, to know what the issue and what the project you're dealing with is. Does that answer? I don't know what's happening to this. You know what I'm going to do now. What I wanted to suggest was, it's disappeared completely. I'll just talk to you. Have a think about the projects that you've got And think about a challenge that you've got to face. One of the things that you're finding difficult with your project, and this is where I wanted you to sit next to somebody and talk to a friend or talk to somebody you've never met. Just think about the project that you're working on or you're thinking about and what's a real challenge there. And identify maybe one or two particular things that you'd like to work on. So I just do that for a couple of minutes, and I'll call you to order in a moment. Okay? Is that clear? Has anybody got a burning question they need to solve for their project? Any couple of examples? We won't go through them all, but just anybody want to say what they've come up with? No? Everybody's shy. You see, I knew if I left it long enough.
No, it's just a comment actually from the gentleman here talking about using local people that are. It wasn't something that I actually even thought about, but just having that question asked has made me realise I've got an amazing artist that uses our project that I wouldn't have even thought about before today. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. And artists are not usually the people that are thought of for this field. And it's crazy because it's really difficult stuff. And we need some artists because some of them are really good thinkers. There was another person over here somewhere. Oh, lady here. Yep.
Thanks. So I work in a community setting project. And we are so good at, delivering workshops that are hands-on workshops. So my question is, how do you, our challenge is how to bring people in a room and actually have the conversation. To bring people in a room or in a space and have the conversation without necessarily doing something. So our clients, our communities are used to coming and then we work. It's a workshop. It's a hands-on, and then we are talking about, so if it's cycling, so if you cycle, if you learn how to ride a bike, then you drive less. And then, and everything comes into. So how can the artist actually help our communities to just come to the space and talk about, have a conversation on climate change?
Okay, very good. So how can an artist help bring community together to just come there for no other reason, really, but to talk about climate change, it seems? Yep. Any other questions, any other thoughts people want to bring up? One there? Hang on, the microphone is on the way. Okay. Oh, for goodness sake. I'm going to leave it there. You don't need me don't need that for the moment.
So I've got a question that's very similar to that one actually, which is about how can we use, or can we use an artist or artists to help engage folk in the community who've got very busy lives, all the rest of it, in issues around climate change and what we as an organisation should be doing to help with kind of fears or whatever they have for the future.
Just say that last bit again. To help
with fears.
Great.
Or
okay.
Concerns they have for the future.
So we've got two quite different questions there, actually. Because one was, actually, how do we just bring people together to think about climate change, not to do something in particular, not to learn to cycle or whatever it might be. And another one there, which is a bit more emotional, isn't it, which is about how to deal with those fears. Are there any other? Let's see if there's one more. Pass the mic over.
My name is Lily. I loved your presentation. Thank you very much. I work at the Students' Association of Aberdeen University, and maybe just to share my experience a little bit and ask you for some feedback.
I want a challenge at the moment. I don't go ahead, but okay. I might move on to somewhere else. But okay.
That's fine. Is there maybe a reluctance from the general public? I'm thinking about students, but maybe the general public as well, who are not artists per se, to artistically represent their thinking or ideas behind climate change. And the reason why I'm asking is because we rolled out what we thought would have been a fantastic competition for students to do just that. We had fantastic prizes, really high value prizes, was featured in the local press and media. yet we received 3 submissions.
Okay, I might come back to that in a minute. I'm going to just see if there's another challenge in the room, something that somebody needs to do with their project. And there, I might turn that round into one if we don't get another. I'm sure there was another hand went up over here somewhere. You see, there's a lady there. I knew it.
I'm part of a community garden project, and we have lots of volunteers of my age in the retirement bracket, but we've just failed to recruit teenage and younger people to the project. So I just wondered if there was anything arty we could do to
Okay.
fit the bill. Thank you.
Lily, is that Lily? I'm going to sort of connect you back up to there because it's perhaps the same question in a way. Is there a way in which artists can reach other people that are not being reached? So we've got one, how can we get people just to think about climate change without thinking about doing something else? We've got one which is actually about dealing with those fears maybe, and I know I'm taking only half your question, but I'm doing that deliberately. And then we've got one about maybe engaging different publics. I'm going to throw the question back to you in your little groups. Have a think about how an artist might help. And there were those examples that I gave earlier. See if any of those fit, or if you've got any other ideas that might fit. But are there ways in which an artist could come in and you think might be able to help? So I'm going to ask you to engage your brain cells for a moment. Okay, so again, talk to your friends, five minutes or something on that. Okay, is that clear? Has anybody had a bright idea, a solution to all of our problems? Anybody got any answers? Wait for the mic.
I think making a big use of video as a medium is a massive thing. It's underutilized, and the science really supports that that's the optimum way to engage people across all demographics, across all age groups. You don't need to go anywhere. It can be provided for free, and it's very easily accessible.
You've just seen how well 57-year-olds cope with the technicalities here, but there is no doubt that a slightly younger generation than me are very good with their phones, for example. So I think there are ways where you might engage a different community using that. And one of the things I would say, I think, and to perhaps particularly to you, maybe slightly to Lily, students, I used to run a theatre company based on a campus. Students don't go to the theatre. They're all doing their own thing. That's one of the challenges. So I think they're quite a hard group anyway in that respect. But I think there are ways of really engaging quite different crowds by bringing in particular bits that may feel a long, long way away from a gardening project. But there are a lot of artists who are interested in gardening who will think, well, I could do that, and that may be interesting to a different crowd. And maybe actually, dare I say it, paying a young person to be involved may draw some other young people in. So just a thought there.
Can I give a little rebuttal to that, though?
Yep.
The majority of Facebook users, for example, are over 35. So if you are trying to engage an older demographic, it's actually not a bad way to do it.
I
I think
agree,
it's 37% of people are under 35 that use Facebook.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's
fair point. Fair point. I'm just hopeless. Any other solutions? I've got one or two myself. Any other thoughts? No? Yep.
Hello, Ben, we listened to you last year, so thank you for last year, because since then we've actually done a lot with artists. So I actually wanted to share what we did to see if it would help anyone.
Right.
We've got a project video that was a videographer that was paid to do that. We've got a volunteer graphic designer who's sitting next to me and has been with us for 1.5 years and does a lot of visual work for us. We actually created a giant climate change board game, which is something that we were going to bring today, but I hurt my arm and couldn't carry it. But that is a 64-piece made out of foam that an artist drew positive moves, negative moves, mystery zones, and it's played with a giant dice. We're working on building a poetry and food pamphlet. So the idea is vegetarian recipes with local artists who are going to actually submit that free of charge. So far everything else has been paid for and the artist has been paid, but they gave us a really good discount rate. And one of the bigger things that we did for the gardening was we had 2 gardens to do, and we had like an atrium in the bottom of a basement office. And we engaged an artist to run workshops on cushion design that told a story of our project while individuals learned sewing skills, took away their own cushions, and we ended up with a final product for the garden. And I just thought I would share that. And we've also done a comic book. So to engage the Chinese children, we've done workshops in the Chinese school, and we've done an adults workshop, and that will produce a 12-page comic. So those are all things that we've done since we spoke with you last year and actually have engaged with artists, and it's done wonders. And we're sitting here thinking that maybe we need to write a song now, because that's the only thing we haven't done.
I'd really recommend Simon. He's fantastic. He's
excellent.
Really good.
Thanks.
That's good to hear. To the lady here who was asking about bringing people together who don't want to do anything in particular, one of the, I think, people are quite used to artists coming in and doing weird stuff, actually, and may treat it as a sort of non-specific activity rather than something where they're learning or whatever it may be. So I think there may be a way in through artists, because communities, society is quite used to artists behaving in funny ways, actually. And so that may be an opportunity to get people to talk about climate change without having to hang it on any particular thing. And some artists, Simon is a really good case in point, Simon Gall, the musician. He's very good at sort of analysing questions that maybe SEPA, Scottish Environment Protection Agency, have, and then framing them in a way that a much wider community understand and can talk about. So finding the right artist to help there may help that question. I don't know. I haven't answered your question. Nobody's answered your question. Has anybody got an answer to his question about more emotive issues? There's a lady there. Quickly.
Ben, we need to...
I know, I will, yep.
Well, I could imagine leading a puppetry workshop that I know sounds absolutely crazy, but doing something that allows your team to imaginatively play and explore without necessarily it being personal to them would perhaps, by the end of the day, be something that where you've managed to air and feel better about those things. That might be totally alien, but you'd have to trust that somebody would be able to lead you through a process from a beginning point of being terrified of puppets to the end of the day going, oh my goodness, actually that's allowed me to express things I didn't even realize I was able. So
there's another book that might be useful called Theatre of the Oppressed by Augusto Boal, who does what's called forum theatre. He's a Brazilian guy, I think he may now be dead. But forum theatre is an interesting way of playing through difficult situations and actually saying, what would we do in that situation to change the outcome? So I'd recommend Theatre of the Oppressed by Augusto Boal. I'm under instructions to stop. So I'm going to say that we are running a conference next year in October on adaptation in climate change, where there'll be a big focus on artists' roles in this. And what I'd like to suggest you do is get together with an artist or a cultural organization and come to the conference with them to begin to plan a project and learn more about how to do your project there. There will be a cost to attend that, but it will be a very interesting conference, I think. And finally, that's who we are. If you want to know more, go to the Culture Shift page, which I've given the link there, but also just take a look at our website. And thank you for listening, and my apologies for being such a hopeless technologist. Thank you very much.